KnockBack, the retro and nostalgia podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to KnockBack. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined, as always, by my brother Dagan, Mr. Still Moriarty. Dagan, thank you for joining me today. How are you today, my friend?
You go Mr. Still in the first 5 seconds. Oh, this is going to be amazing.
Do you even know? We're going to get in. We're going to get in it. Well, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't have even used his name. Never mind. But nonetheless, Dagan, welcome to KnockBack. How are you, my friend?
Coming to you from an undisclosed location down at the beach with the fam. The fam left me for the beach today. They are down in Avalon enjoying the beach while I'm here recording with you. What better way to bring in a early Saturday afternoon than with my bro talking about growing up in the 80s and 90s with Phys Ed.
Indeed.
I ask you.
Gym class.
Jimmy.
We knew a guy in college named Timon that lived next door to us, but he used to always go to the gym, so we called him Jimin. Anyway.
That is funnier than it should be.
Yeah, well, it was ridiculous. He had like a huge Italian blowout and everything. It was fun. I don't know why that came to mind, though.
Did he know you called him that?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. That's even better.
All right, I'm going to go even deeper with the story.
Okay,
this guy's probably going to find this and think this is crazy, but one of my roommates, Chris, thought he was like so funny. You know how they do that thing where they put like your pictures on like when you're a freshman, they might do like a little thing on the door with your roommates where it's like, these are the people that live here or whatever.
Oh, sure.
So it was like people's faces and everyone like took theirs down. But I think my friend Chris took Timmons and then the next year had it on the wall in our apartment.
That is that college shit, man. I love it. I absolutely love it.
And I never saw that guy again.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Anyway. Dagan, this is KnockBack, our retro and nostalgia podcast, all about old things, old video games, old TV shows, old memories, of course, which is what today is going to be all about.
Woo.
You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia for early ad-free access to every episode of the show and the ability to submit questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to the show. None of those today, because this is a very Moriarty-centric episode.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, vote on topic ideas, too. Future topics we still have to do include Metal Gear Solid 4, which we're going to get to, and Harry Potter, the first Harry Potter book. One.
Oh, I'm so excited that you
I'm
put
actually
that
amped about that because I kind of, in preparation for Hogwarts Legacy on PlayStation 5, I was going to play, I wanted to kind of read and familiarize myself with it. I keep saying on Sacred that I feel like that game is my entry into the world of Harry Potter, the wizarding world, as they say.
The wizarding world.
And so this is kind of just a good excuse to fulfill that destiny.
I like that tie-in.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
But before we get into gym class, which is what today is all about, and I was surprised. I went back and looked. I'm paranoid now about every episode we do. After we did the pool episode twice,
I did the same thing.
We didn't know until well after he even published it that we did it twice. So our audience didn't even remember. It really says a lot about everyone listening to the show.
It's your fault.
There's 10,000 of you or so or more that listen to every episode of the show. It's like, get it together. We really need your help.
Or are they that kind that
Right.
they don't want to say like, look, you guys on the sly, you guys did that already.
But Dig, we actually talked a little bit at the beginning of the show before we even started the show, which we'll put at the end of the show. You guys can check that out. But is there anything on your mind that you want to share as you're down, not at home, but in your CIA black site safe room?
Yeah. In the safe house, on the lam, whatever it is. You know what I've just been reveling in today? I'm really fond of this YouTube channel. Shout out Cartoonist Kayfabe, Jim and Ed. They're both working cartoonists, comic book artists, and then they do a daily podcast. A lot of energy these guys have. And they did an episode yesterday or the day before on our beloved Akira Toriyama, famous mangaka, one of the most famous creator of Dragon Ball, as many of you guys know, but also Dr. Slump and a bunch of other things. Of course, we know him as our beloved Dragon Quest illustrator, Chrono Trigger. So warm and fuzzy, nostalgic. Really one of my favorite artists, anime or manga or otherwise. But they were talking about Toriyama's non-Dragon Ball stuff and a specific book that they put out that, whether it was him or Shonen Jump or a combination of both things, I'm not sure. But a lot of his non-Dragon Ball stuff from the 70s and 80s and into the 90s. So a few decades worth of manga. And it just struck me how much I love his art. It was a reminder of how warm I find his stuff how nostalgic and how appealing, and a nice combination of fun and badass, like a nice combination of humor and action. And his art specifically feels like home to me. It gives me such a warm, fuzzy sensation, like almost as much as like, you would think of a specific music or comfort food or a place or a smell that brings you back. His art is just comforting to me. And it's just amazing how art could be that way too, but not even a specific painting or even a specific book or children's book or a comic issue, but just like an entire body of work. It's beyond his talent, just something in there that speaks to my heart, if you will. So I went and ordered this book that they were talking about on the podcast, and I can't wait to get it because I just want to sit there and let it wash over me, and he's just brilliant. And I think they had some sort of number where he has like close to 1 billion issues of his work in Japan alone over the various issues of all the things he's worked on through the years. But I think that might make him the most prolific mangaka who ever lived, which is insane. And he's still going. And the other thing that struck me about him, usually these guys become this huge corporate entity and they just have an army of people behind them. But supposedly he's only ever had 1 or 2 assistants that like spot blacks for him. So in other words, he draws and largely writes everything, virtually everything, and has for decades. Just unbelievable to me. Just like, I'm just thinking of that kind of legacy. And it's like, wow, by the time he was my age, he was already so far into the throes of being that it's almost unthinkable, and started so early, in his teens or whatever, that it's almost unthinkable to still have the energy to do that over all this time. So
Totally.
Shout out to Akira Toriyama, my friend.
Oh, definitely. I mean, legendary.
One of the best. Oh,
in this circle for sure.
Legend.
And yeah, very well said. Interesting stuff.
What about you, my dude? What's going on this weekend?
Nothing. It's today that we're recording, it's our niece Ayla's birthday. And it was just Graydon's birthday, your son's birthday.
Yeah, they're so close.
In a couple days, our cousin Allie Elizabeth's birthday, and then our mom's birthday, and then Dad's birthday. So a lot of birthdays coming up.
Birthday season.
Right, exactly. And so we're going to Allie's, I think, today, a little bit after we're done here. And
that's good. That's
nice. So that'll be fun. And then I don't know, man. I'm just really tired and just kind of worn out. I don't know. I know I said that I think a few weeks ago on the show. Did I talk on the show about my recurring dream?
I don't know.
I don't know the recurring dream where I'm always late to something.
I think you did speak to that.
It's like really crazy how persistent this is. That was always like a fictional device to me. The recurring dream, the guy that wakes up for the dream and is like, well, I'm like, what? I don't have the same dreams and sometimes you have like similar dreams wherever. And the thing is that none of them are identical, but it's always the same. And I do not know why it's happening, but I wake up every day so anxious. And anxiety, usually human anxiety works in reverse to that. Usually you get more anxious the day as things go on and you have to insert yourself into situations. But in fact, the more I'm exposed to the day, the better I become until nighttime when I'm like, I feel actually totally fine. And so it's just kind of shitty to wake up into that every day. It's like so urgent and strange. I do not understand why I have these dreams about trying to go somewhere and being late, not being able to pack, not being able to find my way, not being able to, the time's ticking. It's very weird. Like, what is that?
Is this nightly? Is this several times a week?
It could be several times a night. Like,
oh, wow.
Or I should say a day. Like, so it's usually once a night, but a few days ago, I slept during the day. I took a nap and I had one of the dream. I had the dream when I woke up. I was like, holy shit. Wow. And it was, 5 PM or something. So yeah, it's just, it's not troubling because it's not like haunting me or whatever. It just, I'm so confused by it. I don't understand what is so deep seated in me. This is the depths of the human mind and things we just can't even begin to understand, probably shouldn't understand. I don't know. Something's stuck. There's like a stuck gear, where I can't get past that dream.
I could kind of understand it. I mean, it's deeply rooted in your subconscious, so it's tricky. It's hard to nail down, but your whole life is you have a business and you have to deliver these shows on time, right? Sacred Symbols Plus, Defining Dupe, KnockBack. All these things have to be, you know, this rolling non-stop nature of it having, you know, so it could have something to do with that, with just always making sure everything's up, everything's kind of rolling out on a consistent basis and all of these things. It's interesting what you say too, Kyle, about waking up with anxiety and then it's slowly dissipating over the course of the day. Because that's my, I have some degree of anxiety, but I find the same thing. You wake up with those worries and those things hanging over your head. And then as the day wears on, it becomes a little better and better. But I always thought that was typical, but you might be right. People might have this snowballing anxiety over the course of the day where it gets worse as the day wears on.
Well, that's what I've been told. I mean, I just say that I don't speak from any sort of knowledge, but other than that, my psychiatrist back in the day told me that it's unusual for stress to begin bad and dissipate. It's for people. It's usually just gets worse. That's why they take pills during the day and all that kind of stuff.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. So that's there's not too much going on, but that's kind of just been on the mind recently because I just woke up a little while ago. I stayed up late last night playing The Last of Us on PS5. And then so I just it's wonderful. It's awesome.
You loving it?
Yeah, I love it. And it's so I've been spending time with that last night, and then I went to bed late, and then I woke up late, and then I can feel it almost, you know, in me still, like as it slowly dissipates. It's very strange. Anxiety is a very weird thing because there are literally people out there that do not understand it, and then there are people out there that and like almost think it's like, what are you even saying? And I get that,
right.
And then there are people that really do understand it and get it. And I do think my one thing about mental health that annoys me a little bit is, and it's easy for me to say because I truly feel like I am crazy, is in some way, like touched in some way, is that I feel like people kind of overplay it or overextend it, or everyone has this or everyone has that. And so I feel like people take it less seriously in some modern respect as well when everyone's on meds, everyone's anxious, and I'm like, I get that, but I'm telling you, I really am. You know, so that's like the only thing I can control. And what's funny is that I don't even know what I'm anxious about. People always ask that, like, what are you anxious about? I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I really don't. I'm a well-to-do white man in America.
Interesting.
I really have no idea what I'm worried about. No, none.
But you have the perspective of, you only could have the perspective of you. It is funny because the nature of anxiety, you don't want to minimize somebody's anxiety. And I think a lot of people do have it to some degree, but it is hard to compare from one person to the next because we really don't know. You know, we only have our own perspective. So that's where empathy comes in. And a lot of people will say that from a comforting perspective of, oh, don't worry, you know, I get that to some degree too. But at the same time, you don't want to minimize it. But it's such a wily beast, anxiety. It really is. Sometimes I feel, I don't even know what magnitude of anxiety I have compared to the next guy. But sometimes I just have that, like you said, vague anxiety. And then you try to plug something into it. It's like, okay, I'm worried. What am I worried about? Is it this bill? Is it this deadline at work? Is it the upcoming episode of KnockBack that I'm not prepared, fully ready for? Whatever it is, family, somebody's health, whatever. And then I find that I'm doing that. And then sometimes I think that's just like, I don't know, somebody who's maybe a little bit, I don't want to say OCD, but where you get the anxious feeling and then you're looking for things to plug in. And then if you don't find anything, then you're like, okay, it's like a sigh of relief, which is something, that's also strange. But yeah, I really feel for people with anxiety. I think, what's interesting? I bet there's more anxiety on a rolling daily basis as history progresses than the day before. You know what I mean? Like, I bet there's more anxious people now than there was in the 50s. I bet there's going to be more anxious people 50 years from now than there was in 2022. That's odd.
Well, it's a product of modernity, I think, in some way. Like, it's a product of coming in and having all this technology. Like, I've realized, and you say it's empathy, and it is, but it's kind of sad that it had to be forced on me a little bit more like this. Although I think that it's also evolved, like you said, over time. But I really feel like phones alone have just corrupted our minds. And the idea, it's not even I don't even know why we call them phones, because that's what they were, but they're really not. They're like data pads or whatever, like just exactly what you would see in Mass Effect or something.
Exactly.
and or Star Trek. And I realize myself, and going back to the empathy, like I have no focus anymore, none. Like I've totally broken myself because of this, like having too many things. I was joking around before. I like went and was going to take a poop, and I went and grabbed my phone, and I'm like, I can't be alone without my phone, or I'll have a thought, and was laughing to myself, but it's true. And
That's
I
social
realized
media, though, right? Is that specifically what it is?
Well, it's just like, whatever I'm reading, whatever I'm in sports or YouTube or whatever I'm doing. It's just like, I feel like I always need to be doing something. I think that's the problem, is I always feel like I need to be using my time. Can't just play a game. Need to listen to a podcast while I'm playing the game. And well, The Last of Us I'm playing with my 3D headset, and it's awesome. But that's the first time I've really listened to a game and only played the game since Horizon earlier this year. Like,
wow.
I listen to games, but I also am often doing other things. I'm distracted and pausing my games every hour or half an hour to look at my phone and reading my emails. I feel so scatterbrained. And people say, Colin, or, because I smoke a lot of weed, which is medicinal here in Virginia, although it won't have to be starting next year. It's going to be available for everybody. But, and people are like, why don't, you should stop smoking weed. And I'm like, dude, aren't you stoned and all that? I'm like, dude, I don't think you understand like how high strung I would be and crazy if I didn't have something to
without
calm me down.
Yeah. Too much multitasking, man. I think that's your generation too. Like Gen Xers, I'll speak to myself. I don't multitask well at all. I have to do one thing at a time. But I know what you're saying about being productive and that work ethic. I could speak to that. But yeah, you're just doing too much. It's too much multitasking. You're putting a little too much pressure on yourself, I think.
Yeah, and now I'm trying to get, you're right, I think, and I'm trying to get like another company off the ground now in some hypothetical way. And it is strange. I don't know. I feel like I'm running away from something. I also feel like that's it's interesting. I think that there are a few moments that in my life that I never really dealt with in some way. The divorce of our parents.
Sure.
My fallout with Kind of Funny, which was extremely painful.
That's a big one.
And a couple of breakups that I've had over time.
Sure.
Probably,
Big.
My last relationship.
Yeah.
Just a absolutely horrifying situation in a lot of different ways for me. And even ones in the past. So I think that maybe it's just I'm not strong enough to deal with all this, and I need to kind of figure out how to deal with it. Therapy is a good way to do it, and I encourage people to get therapy. Therapy's worked for me in the past.
Sure.
In fact, and it's not a sponsorship thing, but BetterHelp is one of the longtime sponsors of Last Stand, and that's because I really believe in the efficacy of therapy. I think it's cool to just talk to someone.
Absolutely.
That's just going to listen to you. That's all, and they kind of are trained to do that. But for me, I don't know. I think I'm always just trying to run ahead of something. And the thing I used to be materially paranoid about was not having money. And I guess that could conceivably happen one day, but I'm fine. Like everything's totally great, better than I could have ever imagined. 10 times better than when I was at IGN, like an unbelievable amount of better. But now I think I'm just looking for new problems. And and I've always been like that in some sense. I would often wake up and people are like, oh, it's the morning and they're stretching and the birds are chirping and all that. And I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm back. Jesus Christ. Here I am.
You're doing amazing. I mean, from the outside looking in, amazing. I mean,
well, thank you. On the inside looking out, on the inside looking out, dying inside.
That's the perspective.
Yeah.
But you're not. Just know that you're not.
No.
That's just your POV.
What I keep saying to Dustin and I often say to Ben and others, we are a machine gun. That is what I would consider the mantra of our company. And so there is no jamming. We have to get through. Put a good face on.
And look how much appreciation you have for that with your fan base, with the LSM.
It's much appreciated. I love everyone. Thank you so much.
Unbelievable community.
But no, everything's
unbelievable.
Fine. But the thing that I always tell people, and I have a lot of private conversations with people about stress and anxiety and all that, just manage what you can manage. That's the thing that helps me deal with my stress. Is if I missed an episode of Sacred Symbols, I'd be melting down probably compared to the way I am now. So like, I know I can at least just not worry about the things that I can execute on. And then all the immaterial things that I worry about, I can't even put a finger on. I'll just have to worry about that another time. But nonetheless, I'm sorry. We've been going a long time here. All right. Let's get into the episode at hand. We were trying to figure out, so we're in the midst of a few things. We have a few movies we need to watch. We're kind of going to work through Lethal Weapon. We're working our way through Lost. So we're going to get back through all of that stuff. Like I said, Metal Gear's coming. The first Harry Potter's coming. We're getting through a lot of things. But we know that we're very tuned into what people like most, I think. And it's either the coverage of mega big video games or the coverage of personal stories on the show. And I felt like Gym Class would be a good one to pick off of Dagan's list. Dagan presented me with an extensive list, and I'm down with this idea. And I couldn't believe that we hadn't done it before. Gym is so interesting. I don't know if it's like a formidable thing in other parts of the world, but in the United States, Gym Class is a defining feature of American education. It's the shit that you laugh about most when you watch The Wonder Years or whatever old stuff, Stranger Things. And there's a lot of funny memories there. And what's weird about it is that the high end part of it to me is that I don't feel like gym should really be a thing. I feel like very few people take it seriously. I feel like very few people that teach it take it seriously, in my experience, certainly. And it's like a break for everybody, and you kind of look forward to it. But in hindsight, it's like, instead of getting kids out of bed at 6:30 in the morning and delivering them for their first class at like 7:45 or whatever insane shit that we do in the United States, like they have to be ready for the opening of the market or something at 8:00. Why not let them start a little later or get off a little earlier? And I don't feel that way about the other disciplines, like the other subdisciplines like music and art. I feel like those are important parts of school.
Right.
But I don't feel like gym has a lot of relevance because you have sports, and that's like, so go play your sports. And I always felt like it was, my honest opinion is, and I try to be optimistic about my past in some ways, I really do, is that I didn't get a goddamn thing out of gym. Never. Not once. I don't think I ever one time got anything out of gym. And I have some funny stories and a lot of funny memories and the teachers you remember and all of that, but I don't know. Do you share the same experience? We come from the same place. We went to the same high school specifically. We had different middle school experiences. I went to a private school in middle school, and it's a whole other thing. I'll talk about that, but
I can't wait to hear that.
Because that's like an earth-shaking thing with private school. You have to wear your different uniforms and all sorts of shit. So what do you remember about gym class? What made you want to visit this topic, which I thought was a very good choice of yours in your list?
Yeah, just so many fun memories of growing up centered around gym class. And it's seemingly, as I'm writing my little list down here, I realized different memories depending on elementary school, K-3 for me, junior high, and then high school. Sort of 3 different chapters of phys ed. But you're right. I guess the idea behind having gym class in school is, you're teaching kids their scholastic pursuits, problem solving, creativity, as you said. And then the idea was also like, let's get their brains in shape, but let's get their bodies in shape. I guess that was the broad arches of the whole thing about having gym, teaching how you could be athletic, take care of your body. I guess nutrition was supposed to be a small part of that, but never really was. But all it really did, I think, for a lot of us was leave us with either humorous and or traumatic experiences, ironically, which is really a kind of a universal notion. But just from talking to my kids and my nieces and nephews, a lot of it is still perpetuating. Like a lot of this stuff is still going on to some degree, not quite to the hilarious degree as it was I could speak to the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but certainly still those same notions at the center of this thing, having phys ed on a regular basis, K-12, whether you're in private school, public school, or Catholic school, some sort of religious school. And yeah, it just seems to be, we as Americans, we could speak to, sort of some type of United States institution. Although from my little bit of research, I found out, certainly in the main European countries, England included, that it is sort of a big thing still. But it is interesting because I have so many memories centered around these experiences specifically and these various gym teachers that we had. Which, by the way, I called our sister Dana in for this one and said, give me a laundry list from K through 12, because we went through the same exact education. She was only a year behind me. I said, give me all the gym teachers that you remember. And of course, she listed them off. She has an encyclopedic memory for stuff. And I think we're close, by the way. I think we're pretty close to getting her on an episode. She's like, we would have so much fun talking. I was like, yeah, dude, the audience is waiting. They're waiting.
She's the nut we got to crack, Yeah.
But she knew all the teachers. She had all the memories of the personalities, certain, I don't know, there was a little bit of controversy surrounding some of these people and stuff like that, which I had forgotten about.
Yeah.
So she reminded me of all that. So it was fun. It was fun to go down memory lane and some really funny experiences, man. I can't wait to tell you guys about it.
Yeah, it's funny. I'd had to just go back to something you said, which was you brought up nutrition and all of that too. Dude, these guys were shoving the fucking food pyramid down our throats. I'm looking at it right now. It says milk, yogurt, and cheese servings, 2 to 3 servings. Meat, poultry, fish, dry beans, eggs, and nuts, 2 to 3 servings. And then fruit and vegetables, 3 to 5 servings each. Bread, cereal, rice, pasta, 6 to 11 servings. What? I don't. It's a small wonder that it's so funny when you think back at what people were trying to do to lose weight, and we had no idea, or like people were just so stupid about it. So they were telling, no, like it really was in my mind. I'm like, oh, bread is super healthy. Like, definitely got to eat bread.
Yeah,
it's telling us to eat fucking bread every meal for like 3 of the 4 parts of it.
That's why Gen Xers are all worried about diabetes now. We had, they didn't, I don't know, did they not understand that the carbs translated to sugars? I don't think they did.
Yeah,
it's
I
really
don't know
weird.
if they put it all together, because like people were doing things like eating rice cakes, which I'm pretty sure is just eating carbs, right? Like rice is carbs.
Yeah. Oh, it's straight up carbs.
Or you have like, some crackers or something that's like carbs, nuts, carbs. Good for you.
Don't drink that soda, but here, have this loaf of Italian bread.
Yeah, exactly.
The entire loaf.
Yeah, you can have the entire loaf, 6 to 11 servings of it. I look back at that because I remember being even a kid in the United States and looking at that and being like, I don't think that's right. I didn't know quite like what was going on, but I'm like, I know I don't eat like that. No one I know eats like this, and I'm okay. Like I don't even know how you can have 11 servings of bread a day. I that's hard for me to fathom.
See, you were smart enough to realize that. I wasn't. I was just like, all right, cool. Like, that sounds good to me.
I love carbs, dude. I live for them. Oh. I love carbs.
Our whole family.
I love them. That's the only reason I work out so hard, so I can eat them.
Yeah. Well, now you're doing it right.
Got to do it. Micah told me, by the way, that my arms are getting bigger, and that made me feel really good.
Oh, I could see it, dude.
I was like, yeah.
Yeah, you're looking good.
Well, all right. Let's get into this here. I wanted to talk about Brookhaven Elementary first.
Oh,
I remember this gym really well, and it was down that long hallway. The office is there. The art rooms are on the other side of the music room. Yes. And I had a woman named Miss Moran. Did you have her too?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. In hindsight, she was a very friendly lady. Was Miss Moran gay? I wouldn't have even been tuned into this at all, but the way I see her in my mind is a little bit like, and I don't mean this as an insult, like a kind of like a dykish lesbian. Like that's kind of how I see her in my mind these days. Yes. Short hair, the athletic gear, no makeup, kind of. And that's not. Was she? I don't know.
That's a great question. Dana described her as the typical gym teacher of that era, like the melon body and the stick figure legs. I remember her as being a little bit old, even when I was little, which I'm not sure is accurate, but I think I thought everybody was old.
We talk about this all the time because of everyone's makeup memory being hazy and all that. I have no idea what anyone's age was until I was probably 15 years old.
No clue.
Yeah. No clue. No clue. Like the history teacher I had the hots for in 9th grade, like looking back, she was 22. Like, wow. You know what I mean? It's like, what?
As young as she could have possibly been. Though,
right. And then it's But you don't even. Everyone's old. I'm like, oh, you're old.
Yeah, everybody's old. If you're not a teenager, you're just ancient.
Right. Exactly.
You don't even want to. Yeah. Oh yeah. Exactly. Yeah, Mrs. Moran. Wow.
Yeah. So what do you remember about? What do you remember about Brookhaven Elementary School?
Well, shout out Brookhaven Beavers. Brookhaven Elementary, K through 3.
Did you have to call us that?
I know. I even knew that was wrong before I knew what a beaver. Like, when we were little, it's like, can't we be something cool like a lion or a dragon? But then when we got old and, they added insult to injury, we found out what a beaver was. And it was like,
I
remember Uncle Mike drawing the beaver mascot that was used for years. Did you know that?
That sounds like a familiar story. That's interesting. Yeah.
By the time, I don't know, maybe I was in first or second when he did it, but apparently they used that one for years. It would be amazing to have that, a shirt with that on it.
His licensing is what paid for that pool in his backyard.
Exactly. Shout out to Uncle Mike.
Beaver. I wonder if they're still called that. Just to put it in context, there is a little bit of a reason because the school is off of Beaver Dam Road in Brookhaven, but it's technically off of Fireplace Neck.
That's true.
Which is a different road.
It's true. It kind of butts up to Beaver Dam, I guess, right? Or the secondary school.
Yeah, no, it does. It does a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just wanted to throw out, it's not like we're the completely perverted people in Brookhaven being like, let's name this elementary school the Beavers. What I would be curious about,
parents thought though, right? They had to be like, it's a little.
Well, because that was a more prominent term then than it is now. Beaver, that's 70s. Like a 70s term.
Very 70s. Yeah.
So I'm sure everyone was like, having a fucking good old time drinking their Bud Heavies.
But what's cool about Brookhaven Elementary, Kyle? Because of scouting, because of Boy Scouts, and that's where Troop 4 always had their meetings in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. So through junior high, secondary school, junior high, and then high school, I always was able to go to that gym. So I saw that school shrink as I got older because specifically that gym, because that's where we would end our weekly meetings every single week in Scouts. We would play dodgeball in that gym. So I was playing in that gym as a 5-year-old and I was playing in that gym as a 17-year-old. And it was so cool to see, just to be there and see it change, but really not change, only shrink as you got bigger, drinking out of the same water fountain and the cafeteria too, because that's where we held our meetings. So I was in that building for the better part of, 12, 13 years. And that was a cool memory for me that I would love to go in there now, and just see how tiny it is. Cause that felt like your whole universe when you were little.
Oh, totally, dude. That place was like a unit. It was a constellation of places to go. And it's just a big square, right? And
yeah, literally. It's like one corridor that wraps around sort of the outside and everything's within that.
I just wish it wasn't so, it's so weird today. It was probably always weird, but I just want to go to them and just be like, can you just let us walk around? Like,
I know.
Like we do a nostalgia podcast. We both went here. We're both fairly notable people. I might be one of the more better known people that have come through here.
I'm sure you are.
Can I? And I don't say that in a braggadocious way. It's like I talk about these places all the time. Can I like just see it? And maybe it's totally different. I don't know, but I doubt it because these buildings stay in stasis forever. I've realized that. You see pictures online and all these things. It just seems like things don't change. Like
I don't think they do. They really. I mean, it takes decades for them to renovate and stuff. Just that library alone in that building in Brookhaven Elementary seemed like vast.
It was so cool, man. They had that little nook where you all sit.
Oh,
yeah.
Get the
that woman,
time.
the librarian, Mrs.
Raylick. Was it Raylick? No, Raylick.
It might have been different for me. I think she was Mrs. Schmidt for me.
Okay.
But she lived down the street from Dad when we moved. And it was so interesting because I always knew her as like kind of a mean lady and she was like totally fine. It's funny the perception you have of people when you're not, in it anymore.
Outside the classroom.
And also how horrifying it probably is to work with kids. So like give them a break. Dude, I would blow my head off if I had to be like, no offense. I think it's awesome people teach. I think it's essential. Obviously, kudos, congratulations. You deserve more money. You deserve more respect. I agree with all those things. Would never do it. It's like with anything but like adult classes, probably like college classes. It's like it's no way, man.
Job, man. It takes a certain breed.
I'm afraid of kids in some way. we were walking the dogs yesterday at night, and there were these kids walking by us, and they were like dressed in weird costumes for some reason. I don't know what they were doing. Oh. And one of them was just like, "Hey," to us was like, "Hey, is it Halloween yet?" And then they just started laughing, and I'm like, "Did they just make fun of me?" Like what is going on here? Like
How old were they?
they were probably like 12 or something, like,
Okay, yeah, so they could be busting balls at that age.
yeah, no, they definitely were busting balls, but I was like, what is going on here? Like, it's a very strange.
That's the age too where you're like, do I come back with something witty and get their goat in return, or do I just let it go? Like, I don't know.
Rough them up. Who are you talking to?
Do you have any highlights for Brookhaven Elementary though? Do you remember anything specific that you would peg as like, put a little asterisk on that and say, this was a specific memory that I have of that place for gym class specifically?
Gym class, yeah. Two things. One was, it was funny you were bringing up the things that used to happen in that space, because I remember that gym for two other reasons. One, we used to play bingo there. Do you remember that at all?
Yes.
People used to go and play bingo in that gym.
Yes, they
and
did.
I don't know if it was for
night.
like to raise money for things or whatever, but it was fun. Like I remember doing that. That was pre-mom and dad ruining my life. And then the second thing I remember is field day, which is associated with that. That was in the back. And I have to find it. I have a picture of me from field day drinking a Tom and Jerry. Remember that Tom and Jerry water bottle we had that was like pink? It was like a pink box.
Oh my God. Yeah, dude.
Like totally impractical, ridiculous. Yeah. And I had like a button down shirt on, but it was open.
Yes.
And I'm like drinking out of this thing. And it's so funny. It's probably one of the great pictures of me in childhood. They're not
dude,
that many.
I gotta see this.
Yeah. So it's somewhere like I got to go through all my things and kind of really organize and get them put away. But so those are the two things that I remember most. It's funny because the class itself, I don't really remember what we did. I remember Miss Moran, but I don't remember the tasks that we like or the events that we did. I remember art and music way better in that little triangle in the school than I do of gym class. It wasn't really until my most vivid memories are high school gym class for so many different reasons, because that was a joke.
Oh my God.
But do you have any specific memories of like events or things you did? Maybe I remember like dodgeball or something, but it's so funny. Like at that age, I don't remember the things we were actually doing. Oh, it just came to mind. You know what I do remember? Do you remember when you used to do the fake driving around the gym in the car?
I knew you were going to remember this. I had faith in you.
Yeah. All right.
This is Safety Town.
Yeah. Safety Town.
This is Safety Town.
I feel like I loved that.
Oh, dude. Safety Town was the thing we looked forward to. And yeah, that's one of I have two big highlights from elementary school.
Holy shit. I brought that out of the depths. All right.
Oh, I'm so glad you remembered Safety Town. And I was really curious to know, though, if your generation was even involved in that, just because I've taken a small cross section by people I've talked to, Dana, Helene, my kids. Lilia's best friend is with us this weekend at the beach. So I was able to ask her to like, do you know about this? And it is different from state to state. But for those who don't know what we're talking about, and I'll go with my other highlight after this. There was a thing we did annually in gym class as little ones, as probably grade school, K through 3, elementary school specifically, called Safety Town, which was this thing that we did. I want to say it was twice a year, but that's probably wishful thinking. I literally think it was one week a year and this is what it was. It was a little miniature town that they would that this company would bring in. And it was picture like streets and buildings and railroad crossings and stop signs and yield signs and all these things. And then there would be those little sort of janitor dollies. Now, they're those little wooden or vinyl squares with the casters underneath that you basically roll furniture on and stuff. You would sit on those and shuffle around Safety Town down the streets and obey basically the traffic rules. You would stop at the railroad crossings. You would yield for others at the intersection. You would stop at the stop sign. You would let pedestrians cross in front of you, stop at a crosswalk, all that thing. And we loved it. I mean, we absolutely thought it was the most fun thing in the world. And you had to, I think maybe you were allowed to go through and then they would give you a score at the end. Oh, you kind of missed the yield sign here. You had a collision with your friend at that 5-point intersection or whatever. But I got, you have warm memories of this thing because it's this special thing and everybody makes a big deal about it. We're going to go down, get class to the gym and we're going to do Safety Town. It's actually this company, this man, just in researching it through Wikipedia, this Ohio police officer in the 30s, apparently, started this whole program after some kid in his jurisdiction was killed going to school. He was struck by a car and killed. So this police officer started this thing, which became this national thing around the country, instituted in public schools and gym classes and stuff, where they would come in and basically teach kids road safety, how to be safe, and you think like, you're 6 years old. Why do you need to know driver safety? But I think the bent was to teach pedestrian safety, what you do at a railroad crossing. Supposedly it was fire and gun safety back in the day too, which was like learning how to handle matches and firearms. So I don't know. We were way past that later on.
Learn how to do drive-by shooting.
We all had a little 6-shooter and we had to make sure there's not one in the chamber, kids. But like it's hilarious to know it was a thing. But in talking to Helena, I was kind of heartbroken and devastated because she didn't remember this. And she was like, what? Like, this is some kind of crazy dream you had. And I was like, no, this is a real thing. But then I realized what they did in Pennsylvania, in our area specifically, Safety Town was brought into the townships. And there's towns around me that have a Safety Town outside and, like outside in a park. Like area. So you could go to it any time out of school. And it's this little outdoor thing that's like a little miniature version of your town where you could take your big wheel or your bike and you could ride around like the little miniature. Which is crazy. Like, so they didn't do it in school. They just had it all the time.
Yeah,
they
that's
instituted it on a township.
Yeah, I'm looking at pictures of it right now, all the different kinds. Yeah.
Dude, that was, I think going to junior high, the biggest heartbreak was not having Safety Town anymore. It was
I'm feeling like I'm looking at pictures and I feel like everything I'm seeing is substantially better than what we did. Like at Brookhaven Elementary School.
I guess ours was all like what? Like construction paper and paper towel tubes. I remember being impressed by it as a kid.
Yeah, it was cool. It just,
but if you look at it
now, it's like, geez, this is some pretty serious fake townhouses and all sorts of shit. It's like, no, we definitely didn't have that.
I'm so glad you remember. I'm really glad you had it still because I
definitely did. I remember that.
Okay,
I might have been at the very tail end or something of the era when it was happening. But that would have been like 1991 or something, maybe 1992.
Yeah, it's nice to think they still had it then. 20 years later, after a good 10 years after I was doing it.
Safety Town
was and I remember the gym teachers being aggravated with it, like, oh, we got to do this thing this week. But you think they would love it, like they didn't really have to do much, just hand somebody the little dolly and say go for it. Can you imagine having Safety Town after elementary school when you're just getting up to all kinds of mischief, like trying to ride those things around like a
grinning,
skateboard?
Thinking about it actually when you were talking about it, because I was like, there must have been people that were just dicking around. That wasn't probably in my spirit, but yeah. I'm actually looking at, there's a Safety Town 1967. Oh, dude, what is this?
Videos?
Safety Town, Brookhaven. This shit just knows to know what I'm looking for because it's showing me Richmond and then Brookhaven, New York. There's a Safety Town, but it's like all built properly, like real buildings and sidewalks and shit.
Oh, so they have it outside now.
There's a Safety Town facility, it says, yeah. So there it is.
Oh, that's so cool. Still a thing?
We should go there and just tear it up. You and me. All right, let's talk about middle school. I went to 2 different middle schools. So I went to York Middle School I actually went to 2 different elementary schools too, technically. I should say that because when I moved to Maine, I did 4th grade at York Elementary School. And then 5th and 6th grade, I did at York Middle School. And then 7th and 8th, I did at St. Mary's Academy.
Okay.
New Hampshire.
Oh, wow. You had a ride. Yeah.
Yeah, man. No wonder I'm totally normal. So I have some funny memories of this era because the most notable gym memory I have actually is probably from York Middle School. And it wasn't anything crazy. Our gym teacher's name was Mr. Butler. He was totally fine, nice person. But Maine was a little more outdoorsy, a little more, rustic. And I remember, and I'm sure this isn't unusual, but it definitely was for where we were from, is that I remember one of the things that they made us do was, and I don't know if you ever did this, but use maps and compasses to like move around and like go to places and mark them on our maps. And like that was a whole gym class thing to do.
Wow.
Like going into the woods and doing that. And I remember being like, I don't have any fucking idea what you're talking about at all. And I remember just not doing it. Like I just being like, I don't know, you just walk around and do all these things and then just copy off of people. But like they would give us these paper maps and you're supposed to mark them and like use the compass to get around. And
Oh, wow.
I know I say the word compass
Is it
wrong.
hiking?
It's I guess like I don't know what it was all about, but that's
tracking.
Tracking. That was my biggest. It might have been hiking. That was my biggest memory of that being at that particular gym. And in fact, I don't really have a clear mental image of the gym at all in Maine. I remember another memory of the gym is that they were doing like some sort of fundraising thing and they had a goal scoring, like, in Maine. So it was like a hockey shooting event. And I played goalie in it. But when I was shooting before, the ladies that were running it didn't like me for some reason, I remember shooting before I was playing and I broke the goal light. You know how the light goes on when there's like a goal?
Sure, of course.
It destroyed the light bulb. And so I remember that as well. But what are your memories from middle school? I'll talk about private school afterwards because that's a little deeper. Talk to me about your memories from Bellport Middle School.
I really want to hear that. Well, this is perfect because I remembered just in writing down and just trying to go back to that time, there was such a departure from going to Bellport Middle School from elementary school. Because as I remember elementary school gym class, the main thread was, what we all experienced. Kiddie games, right? You had freeze tag and musical chairs and hot potato and red light, green light, maybe. Maybe you had that special event outside where you took the parachute out and you
what the hell was that?
I have no idea. I have no
and you would go
idea.
Underneath it, right?
Yeah. So you would take a parachute, which is a huge perimeter, and your entire, not your class, but your entire grade would go out and circle this parachute. Everybody would grab hold, and then it would take, I remember it being so frustrating because it would take like 40 minutes to prepare this. And then the whole conceit was we're going to lift the parachute up and then go underneath it, which took about 3 seconds. And that's what I remember. Like it was, I don't know what was the thing to teach cooperation and organization so we could all do this task together, because only when we lift it up together can we go under. I have no idea. But I remember gym class being like this thing where it was like kiddie activities, and you appreciate it at the time. You're a little one, But junior high was where our first introduction to organized sports. Now, the one awesome thing that I discovered in elementary school, which I know you loved too, Kyle, was the game of kickball.
Oh, yeah.
Baseball
is awesome.
Baseball without the bat and ball, right?
Boom.
Amazing. Boom.
Yeah.
Always loved it.
I always think of you when I hear that noise or the noise of a baseball being hit on an aluminum bat, because I know you find it as funny as I do, and I just find it funny. Like
it's so funny.
Bing, off the aluminum bat, it's just a funny noise to me.
Oh, anyway, it's the best, dude. But kickball, that was like a great love of mine. I fell in love with kickball instantly because really, if you think about it, it is one of the most fun games to play. But then it gets even more fun in junior high because everybody's a little more athletic now. You understand the rules better. It's not just a free for all of like kids kicking the ball and running to third base. Like, some of the girls were, wearing dresses and they couldn't really do it. Like junior high was where we had our first like serious kickball game. Right. And we talk about picking, having captains and picking sides. We're going to get to that. I promise you, we're going to get to picking in gym class. That's like the most important conversation in this whole thing. But kickball was the first thing that I remember being like, oh, this could be even more fun in junior high. But that was my junior high was where it became less of the kiddie activities. And now we're playing organized games of touch football or street hockey in the gym or outdoor soccer. And we were understanding the rules of the sports better, but everybody was also a lot more coordinated. So it got to be a little more competitive and a little more fun in that way. And I remember kind of enjoying that in gym where it was like, okay, now it's like, it was no different than what we would do at home on the weekends. Like we're going to organize a game of touch football, or we're going to go play a game of street, stickball on the street and get teams together and play with the big kids and even get the little kids to fill in the outfield and stuff. So that was a lot of fun. And it was before things got too serious where it was like noted who were the class athletes and who was the star athlete of the class and all these things. Everybody was just able to have, or, you were the overweight kid, so you felt ostracized. It was a little before all that. So I felt like it was still pure and it was still fun going into junior high school. Just a little more organized. If like you were down, somebody was going to win. So we were going to play a soccer game for 40 minutes. Somebody was going to win. Somebody was going to lose. So there was that fun element of it and the sportsmanship wasn't bad yet. People didn't have bad attitudes generally. So in thinking back to junior high, I think I have some really fond memories of it just being straight up fun. And it's also seemed like a break from school, no different than recess or lunch, where it was like, oh man, if I could just get through this math lesson, we could go play hockey in gym. And I thought of you with hockey, Kyle, because I was never a big hockey guy, but I remember we did this indoor unit in gym, and maybe we did it when it was raining out, where we would stay inside, and we had like little miniature plastic, all around plastic hockey sticks that were not as long or as heavy as like a real street hockey stick. And then we had these soft rubber pucks that we played with. And that's where I learned the rules of hockey, where I learned the sides and the different positions and stuff like that. So it gave me an appreciation of it. And I guess the gym teachers didn't stress it too hard. Like they weren't railroading us to be super athletes or anything. They just kind of taught us the rules and let us have a good time. And that's probably where they were kind of scouting too, as team sports became a thing. Like, oh, I could see like so-and-so has a great arm, or he could hit the ball. He's a contact hitter, or this guy has a penchant for lacrosse or whatever. They probably started to kind of pick out like who would be interested and who would be successful at certain sports, which is kind of interesting to think about, right? Like they were that was like the first time we were being scouted or judged on a physical basis.
Totally. Yeah, that's a very good point. Never really thought about that. Yeah, I wonder what they thought I would be good at. Probably not very much.
Me too.
Floor hockey was always fun. It was always fun to do for me, like the thing that I love to do most. And floor hockey is a little bit of a joke but compared to roller hockey or ice hockey, but that's what's fun about it. It's the same thing with kickball. It's kind of a joke compared to baseball because it's accessible. I think that's what's so fun about kickball is that anyone can really play it and pretty much play it effectively. If you can't kick a kickball being thrown at the plate like 10 miles an hour, there's something wrong with you, no doubt. Like you got to be able to do that. And I would love when a person would just make contact with a kickball, just fly, just absolutely go so much further than the outfield. There's something very, very funny about that memory. I'm glad you brought that up.
You knew that one dude, right? That was going to kick it into the woods.
Oh yeah,
you could just do it every time. Maybe it was a slightly older kid. And you know what the funny thing about kickball is? It instilled a slight element. It made it a little more accessible than baseball because baseball is a hard sport. But it also kind of ushered in a little element of fear because on top of all the baseball rules, tagging out, stepping on the bag, catching a ball on the fly, you could actually throw the ball. You could peg someone with the ball. So the base runner or the hitter or the kicker can't touch the ball, just like baseball. But the fielder was able to peg the base runner between bags with the ball. So, and that got brutal, especially like maybe you would take it easy on the girls and the gym teachers would instill like no head hunting, but you would try to peg your friend as hard as you could. It was like kind of introducing dodgeball into baseball a little bit. Like there was a dodgeball element to kickball too, which made it fun because you didn't want to get hit.
Right.
You wanted to make sure you cleared the infield so you could at least get a double so you didn't have to get pegged with that dude. The shortstop had this lethal arm or whatever, which is hilarious. But I have to tell you, man, my biggest junior high memory, and maybe my most traumatic memory ever, I don't know if I ever told you this story. So back in elementary school and junior high specifically, I remember you remember we did the physical fitness awards.
Yeah, I wrote them down. I wrote them down as the presidential challenge. That's what I remember them being called.
That's what it was. The presidential physical fitness awards. So once a year, or maybe it was twice a year, we would go out and you kind of would run this gauntlet of exercises, sit-ups and pull-ups and shuttle runs and 40-yard dash. And maybe there was an endurance run in there or whatever. And the gym teacher would assess your skills. And if you were a well-rounded, physical fit little kid, they would give you the Presidential Fitness Award, which is like a little piece of paper, a certificate, and maybe a little pin that you could put on your little lapel or your backpack or whatever. And I remember doing this thing in the gym, and everybody had their little thing. Maybe somebody was doing the gymnastics part. Maybe somebody was doing the shuttle run. There was one bit where you had to climb this rope to the top of the ceiling and then come down. And I remember I really wanted to. I was still at that age. I was probably in 4th grade at the time. And no, you know what? I was older. I was probably in 6th. I was in my first year of actually junior high, because we had a weird thing called intermediate school between elementary school and middle school. That was 4th and 5th grade. So it was after that. So it was 6th grade, first year of junior high. I'm still kind of like, you're at that age where you're not rebellious yet. You just want to kind of do good at everything. Whatever the teacher says, like, do this, you kind of want their approval. So I'm trying to really do everything like to the best of my ability. And I climbed this rope, and dude, I don't know what happened. I lost grip and fell from the top. Square on my back. And it was the first time I got the wind knocked out of me, and I didn't know I got up and I was like, ooh.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary.
It's really scary. I was like, oh my God, I couldn't breathe. And I'm running around, panicking in a perimeter, holding my back. And probably either the gym teacher didn't give a shit, or he just thought I was winded, like I was just running out of breath from working too hard, and completely ignored me. Like completely acted like it wasn't happening. And I remember being so petrified because I didn't know. And then you get the wind back in your lungs, you realize, okay, like basically you hit yourself square in the back and just knocked all the breath out of your lungs. I'll never forget that, because I think it's the most scared I ever was as a kid, because I didn't know what that was. And no one was comforting me about it, which was like,
jeez, it's really,
it's like, I don't know if I'm dying. Why is he ignoring me? I had no idea. But that was probably, sadly, that was the one memory that stands out, is like, and I don't think I got the award that year either, which was I got that a couple of times as a little kid. And I don't think it was always the chin ups that got me, because I have no upper body strength whatsoever.
Oh yeah, me neither.
Like a T-Rex.
Totally.
It's like,
that's nothing. The thing with I'm glad you brought the rope thing up too, because I never could climb a rope.
So
never
hard.
even bother. I was like, no, I can't do this. In high school too, I was like, I can't. I don't. And I didn't understand what I didn't get about it until I realized as an adult. I'm like, no, you just have no upper body strength. You just don't. You can't even comprehend it. And it's different for me now, but it wasn't. It was like that for 30 plus years of my life, where it's just like you just don't have very much upper body strength. So the idea of pulling yourself up a rope is anathema to everything you understand about your bodily capabilities. And so,
yeah, you can't fake it. You can't even fake that.
No. It's so like, I remember being so intimidated by it. And that to me it's funny when you talk about rope climbing. For some people, that's the Wonder Years type fiction that never happened in their gym class. But for some people, it really did. And I remember that as well. And I'm glad they brought up the presidential challenge, because that was all about kind of showing where sit-ups, totally fine. Push-ups, pretty good. But the running, I remember being really, running the mile and doing whatever you had to do, 40-yard dash, whatever that was.
The mile was a big thing.
Yeah, this I could do. Yeah. This I can handle. Thank you. I have Micah bring me a little something that I'm going to need as a prop later on.
Oh, nice.
So, okay. Is there anything else to say about middle school? Yes. I want to talk about my private school days real quick. I went to private school for 2 years.
Oh, please.
Yeah, and of course. St. Mary's Academy. And so you wore a uniform to school, which I think is totally fine. I really, in hindsight, don't mind that. But at this age, and so the high school was K through 8, or the school was K through 8, and then you went to St. Thomas for high school, which I got into, but I never went to. And that was different. That was like suit and shirt and tie kind of thing. This was like uniforms. And so what was funny is that you had gym twice a week. And you had to wear a certain uniform to school depending on if it was gym day or not. And you would get in trouble if you wore the wrong uniform or whatever. So you had your shirt, you had to tuck it in your pants or whatever, and your nice shoes. But then you could wear the SMA embroidered polo shirt and like the shorts or the sweatpants that you would have to buy and sneakers. And you had to wear that the whole day.
Wow.
And in hindsight, it's like, why didn't we why weren't we allowed to change? I guess that's a lot for younger kids. I guess you just kind of want to have a uniform, pardon the pun, but a uniform thing for all of the children. But I remember that so much about private school was the gym attire and how you had to wear it all day. And it felt kind of nice. Like it felt kind of freeing. But at the same time, in hindsight, it's very strange. So you wear your uniform 3 days and then this gym uniform 2 days. And that's the way it went. But I don't remember very much more about gym class there. I have this memory we were doing things like out. They had like a little playground. You do some activities outside. One embarrassing memory I have, although I really didn't mean anything by it, was we had to like hold hands or something like that with like a circle. And I was holding hands with this girl, Jenny Brown. And she was like one of the popular girls, but I didn't think anything of it. I was holding her hand, but then I like put my fingers in between her fingers when we were holding hands because I just thought it was more comfortable.
Oh, you interlocked the fingies.
Yes. I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, we're sitting here. It's just, I didn't think, in hindsight, of course. I remember her just pulling her hand away. Scarred me for life. Okay. I want to get into high school. We have to talk about high school. We went to the same high school. So this is where it gets relevant to us again. And I went and the prop I wanted Micah to go get is, I don't know if it's coming through, is
what do we got?
My baseball glove. Because my glove when I was a kid, I grew out of it. And then I needed a new one. So I just stole it from Bellport High School.
Oh, what?
And I tried to scratch out, I don't know if it's coming through, but the BHS. I don't know if that's coming through.
Property of BHS.
But so I didn't take, what's funny is that I didn't take it from gym class itself. It was left in the field one day and I was out there playing baseball and I'm like, I'll take this. And because I'm a lefty. So it's hard, when you're, when your friends, none of my friends, at least me growing up, it's so frustrating because we watched baseball growing up and so many lefties. So many lefty pitchers, so many lefty batters, and I'm a lefty thrower and I'm a lefty batter. And then when you're growing up, it's like no one's a lefty around me but me. I don't know what that was all about. It felt so weird, like you were seeing something else that suggested that there were way more lefties than were really materializing around you. So I thought that was funny. I asked Micah to go into the garage to get this because this is a literal Bellport High School shitty, glove. I haven't used in years, but yeah, this is the glove I used in in middle school and in high school when I would just play baseball with my friends.
Never get rid of that, man. That's an awesome keepsake. That's so cool.
Yeah, it is. So I love baseball, but oh god, I have like shit all over me because it's probably never been opened in like 20 years. So I wanted to bring that up. But what are your memories of Bellport High School? A very interesting and unique time for me there in gym class. It's a complete waste of time by the time you get to high school. I think I kind of resented gym in high school, to be honest.
I hear that. Yeah.
And I resented it for multiple reasons. I resented the waste of time and how seriously it was taken. I don't know if they were just saying this, but they used to say if you didn't do 4 years of gym and pass, you were not going to graduate. And I was
that was true.
That's insane. That's insane.
I'll get to that.
I played hockey all year, my entire childhood and teen years. Like I'm way more athletic than half the people getting A's in gym. I just wish they took that into consideration. And then it's also interesting because I don't know if they were doing it in middle school too, but you were able to change your clothes, and you were supposed to change your clothes to work out. But that was like that was my first time doing that around people. And it was very awkward and weird. And then you would forget your clothes sometimes. And I've said it before, my gym locker got fucking robbed when I left the lock off of it once, and I got my wallet stolen. So I remember that really well. But what do you remember about Bellport High School, the home of the Clippers, with that big boat in the middle of the gym? I actually love that.
Home of the Clippers.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one. With the Clipper, how did it go between the Clippers and the Junkyard Dogs? Junkyard Dogs was just football?
Yeah, for some reason, our football team was called the Junkyard Dogs, and everyone else was called the Clippers. I don't know. And the football team's like prodigious. But yeah, still to this day.
To this day, I think, yeah.
But I think it would have been so much cooler if they were the Clippers. I've said that in the past. Like the anchor on the side of a helmet is super fucking cool. That's like a dope logo. Way better than the dumbass dog. That's why I don't have any merch, because they sell merch and they have lots of Bellport football merch, but it's like I'm not wearing the Junkyard Dog.
It's still the dog, right? With the spiked collar, the
and someone would get in an outfit and like dance and do it. Did you have that?
Of course. Yeah. The Clipper ship would have been a weird mascot.
Yeah, definitely.
Or the anchor. Yeah.
You could have had like a sailor character. Someone could have been Gung Ho.
There you go. Good thing. Why?
Gung Ho V2 dressed as a Marine.
So many. God, dude.
Yeah, so talk to me about Bellport
memories. Unbelievable. I mean, the first thing I was thinking of was co-ed gym. Two big overarching thoughts that started in junior high but sort of trickled over to high school. The first was co-ed, that I realized like we were playing gym all together, the boys and the girls, through elementary school, and as far as I remember, through junior high school. And then we only played girls to my best, with the girls, to my best recollection, in high school for certain things. Like we would mix with the girls for volleyball, I remember. I believe badminton, tennis, and maybe early on, like 9th grade, soccer. But a lot of the stuff, even basketball, surprisingly, we would split from the girls. They would do their unit, whatever it was. Maybe it was the same thing, just with the girls. And then so baseball, football, I remember soccer, and basketball specifically, we would just go out, with just the boys. And it would be like captains, pick sides, all that kind of stuff. I want to have that conversation with you. So that was the first time we weren't really with the girls. And I think that's probably what it was, is that you have separate locker rooms. You're changing now. But I remember changing for gym class as early as junior high. And then the big thing for me that always kind of haunted me and piqued my curiosity was the showers. Because we grew up with TV and movies, right? When you were in high school and you were, in those movies or those TV shows, you were showering, whether it was Happy Days in the 50s or Brady Bunch taking place in the 70s or some sort of 80s John Hughes movie. So our contemporaries in that case, kids were showering in high school. Now, I know it was very West Coast centric and a lot of this stuff and all of that. And maybe it was different in California than it was on the East Coast of the United States. But I always remember the showers being there as early as junior high, and no one was going near them. It always seemed like they were those showers from a different time, whether it was the tile color or the fixtures. Like maybe they did this back in the 60s, but I'm sure by the 70s, no one was taking showers in high school anymore, at least where we were. I can't even understand how awkward that would be. You already have the awkwardness and sort of the hardships and trials of being in junior high and high school. And then you're going to compound that by making everybody be naked together. Like it was the most foreign thing from my mind to be with my classmates. And keep in mind, like, right, we knew these kids from kindergarten. I was with the same people for 13 years. We were all together. And I could not think of being like naked with like changing bathing suits with my best friend on the weekend, just us in a bedroom, like let alone like with like the bullies and the kids you didn't get along with and stuff, all being together in the showers. Like it just seemed so crazy to me.
Yeah, it is.
And,
it is.
It was unpleasant being sweaty and going back to class, but I definitely preferred that over, thank God we weren't forced to take showers. And I wanted to ask you that, your experiences with that, but also remind me, did the girls take showers? Because obviously, they're a little bit more concerned with their body.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. What I remember is that it's so funny. I haven't thought of this picture in my mind, but where the boys' locker room and the girls' locker room go out on that hallway next to the gym. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I remember that.
And you can go straight or you can go left or you can go right back to the gym.
My God.
I used to hang out there after gym because you would wait for people to get out of the, girls or guys to get out. So you'd be waiting for them.
Shit, I forgot about that.
And yeah, I don't know if they took it. And see, what's funny is that I know that people have said to me in the past that they did, like there was a showering culture or something at their high school or whatever. But it's the same thing with me. Like no one was going near those things. I assume the football team was probably using them or other sports teams might have used them, but I don't,
maybe.
But I don't know for sure. I just don't know. That to me seems. Here's the thing. You shouldn't be doing anything at school that is requiring you to need to take a shower. And that's where it kind of gets back to me with the whole gym being necessary at all. Like I just do not feel like it makes any sense, because you're not there, because people are like, well, what about your physical education? And I'm like, no, that's very important. However, you're not there for spiritual education at school, right?
Oh, yeah. No,
right.
True.
You're not there for some sort of psychological education. You're not there for specific trade education. So it's the idea that you're in there to educate your mind, the sciences, the arts,
That's a good point.
the humanities.
Right.
That's what you're there for. Math, literature, history, fine art, music, and so it's like, there shouldn't even be gym. And then there really shouldn't even be like a locker room and this whole constellation of showers that it's so funny, because I think about that all the time when I think about gym, where I was like, what that was a huge part of the locker room complex at Bellport, was where there was a lot of room to, like, for dozens of men to take a shower together if they wanted to. Boys. Yikes. I don't know about all that.
Oh my God. I know. And I feel like those fixtures were just rusted shut. Like those showers beyond the lockers, because they were always in the back, to my best recollection, the showering area. Those hadn't been turned on in 2 decades when I was in. There's no way. Like, no.
I remember people used to go turn them on and just leave them on sometimes, and you'd walk in there and there'd just be a bunch of showers on,
or throw someone in the shower.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
like the bullies throwing a kid in
Yeah.
the shower. I do remember that. And I don't think I was ever pegged for that, thank God. But yeah, that's a great point. Like,
I walked there so many times where like every shower was on, or like it was just like, what is going on? Kids are funny, but yeah, I don't know what, like, it would be interesting to know when was the last year when anyone really was using those showers there. I'm sure some of the gym teachers would have loved showers full of boys, but
it's funny too. I never talked to mom or dad, or even slightly younger, like Aunt Joni and Aunt Carla, Uncle Mike, their generation. I wonder if they were showering and they went to a mixture of Catholic and public schools. And it might have been different for each one, but I wonder if their generations did, growing up. Aunt Carla and Aunt Joni and Uncle Mike graduated from high school in the 70s. Like, were they taking showers in school? Was it a mandatory thing just for, bodily health and BO and all that kind of thing? I don't know. But I do remember, that's the other thing. I do remember kids that stunk.
Oh, totally.
And that didn't help.
You shouldn't put, I remember that too. And it's like, you shouldn't even put kids in a position where you're just going to exacerbate that problem. Like you shouldn't be going to school for these reasons. Like, physical education is I don't know. So I want to bring up a few things about Bellport that I thought were funny that I wanted to pick your brain about. Number one is square dancing. Oh. I need to talk to you about square dancing. Why did they do this to us? And I wonder if they still do it. I think we brought it up in a previous episode, dude. It must have been a joke, because they would literally bring out this record player even when I was there and play this thing on like tapes or records. And it was a 1 week a year unit, I guess, for gym. And you always knew it was going to get pulled out, and they never hinted when it was going to happen. And what I remember was it would combine a lot of different gym classes together that were happening, I guess, at separate, at the same gym time, but separate parts of the gym or whatever. And I remember one of the years getting paired up with my, at the time, friend Casey, who I ended up dating, who was a year older than me. We actually went to Northeastern together as well. And so it worked out sometimes, and then sometimes it was just heinous. But what do you remember about square dancing? Why did they do this to us? It was so awkward. And we are on Long Island. That was the weirdest part. There is no
weirdest part.
There is, and I mean this sincerely, not one iota of cowboy culture on Long Island. It's not. It's a Northeast beach community. It has nothing to do with square dancing. Nothing. So that was also the weirdest part. And that's why I feel like it must have been some sort of conspiracy to force us to do some weird shit or something. I don't know. I don't get, like, for laughs, or I don't know, man. What do you make of, do you remember that square dancing every year?
Dude, I mean, the only thing I could think of is so we could tell funny stories when we grew up. I mean, it was so bizarre. As you said, right? We're in the shadow of the Big Apple on Long Island. Like, the biggest, greatest, arguably greatest city in the world. We're in the suburbs in the Northeast United States. I had to go down a little research rabbit hole with this because it really is bizarre. And I wanted to see if I could get some answers. And then I would talk to other people that also grew up in the Northeast, like my wife, grew up in the Philadelphia suburbs, not far from, where we grew up 100 miles away. And she never did square dancing in gym. So I was like, all right, this is so weird. I have to get answers because it was a thing. And I think it might still be a thing. And it just seems so foreign to our reality. Thinking back, right? I don't know if the philosophy was, okay, it's like, we're going to do some sort of mixer, some sort of icebreaker where we're going to make the boys and the girls socialize. And I remember doing square dancing in junior high school too. And I wonder if that was in anticipation of our first co-ed dance, which I think for us was in 8th grade.
That's interesting.
So a way for the boys and the girls to feel more comfortable mingling and getting together. So it's not just the boys standing on the wall and the girls dancing together and nobody really mixing it up. But that's what I thought. But you're absolutely right. It's hilarious because we all dreaded it and they knew it.
Oh, totally.
So there was no advertisement or no preview. Like you would walk into the gym and you would see that record player. That's another weird thing. And that would be the telltale sign that square dancing was going on. And you would want to run the other way, but the gym teacher already saw you. There was no cutting. You were doing it. And there you were, do-si-doing round and round with your partner.
Remember doing the thing with your arm up like this, where you put your arm up like this, and then you do the circle?
Now, promenade. Like what? Like everybody's walking around the perimeter.
Yeah, promenade your partner.
To us, it seemed like a cowboy thing.
Totally.
Right? And then in researching it, you guys could go look. I won't say who it is. There's a big reputable nerd YouTube channel that did a story about this. The sort of the roots or the beginnings of square dancing and where it started and how it started and all of this. And they say in this video that square dancing was this sort of white supremacist thing started when jazz started to take a foothold in America. Very American style of music, a very iconic, then seen as a rebellious style of music, very new agey for back then, that it was something to sort of butt up against jazz music, which was black music. But they were saying square dancing was purposely invented to make a statement against the Jews, which they saw as champions.
This took a turn. This took a turn I didn't expect. Okay.
Yeah. So the Jewish were seen as champions of black music. So they basically had this white supremacist sort of rebuttal against, Jewish people. So there was a racist thing.
Wow. So this is a multiracial conspiracy. Yeah.
Yeah. So when people tied it to the South didn't want anything to do with it. So they said, no, this is a Midwestern thing. This is a cowboy thing. And then the Cowboys didn't want anything to do with it. And they said, no, this is a New England farm thing. And then the New England farmers would be like, what? We're in the Northeast. Like, it's a Southern thing. And then it would just be this cyclical thing of nobody wanting to own it, right? We always saw it as a cowboy thing. I thought of it in the same breath as like John Wayne, Cowboys and Indians.
Well, I see it in not any, but their movie that's in a Texan saloon where everyone starts dancing and doing their move, like the
same shit. The piano with the spinning thing, the double doors,
player piano,
right, the player. Yeah. Same thing. So it was so weird that we were subject to this every year, and no, it didn't. The weird thing was it didn't have the effect that people wanted it to have. Like, it just gave us more social anxiety. It was forcing us to feel comfortable with other people, and the boys ended up mixing it up with the boys and the girls ended up mixing it up with the girls, and nobody really wanted to intermingle. And I remember it being like a thing too, where it was almost like the captains picking their sides for the gym sports. Like, it was like, nobody wanted to dance with the girl, the stinky girl. Nobody wanted to dance with the overweight boy. Like, it was just another way of making everybody feel ostracized. And that's kind of it's hilarious in retrospect, but it's also kind of tragic, right? Because you're compounding what everybody's going through. You know what I mean? You're not letting it go. You're only exasperating the situation.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was gonna say what I remember too is that it was like a unit where it combined great, because gym was like where you were with all ages.
Right.
So I remember as I got older, I remember in like 11th and 12th grade, it was much less stressful because you were like an upperclassman with some social credit, right? And
that's a great point.
So I don't remember the specifics other than being with Casey that one year. I don't remember any of the specifics who I dated, like, or who I would rather danced with, but I do feel like it got less worse, better the more you got on. But Dig, you brought up, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you keep bringing up picking sides. I feel like you have something to say.
Oh,
because it just keeps coming up. I just feel like you have something. It's haunting you. So talk to me about picking sides.
I honestly think this is the most important aspect of the whole conversation. And I think this colors my memories of gym class and being in grade school the most out of anything that I could think of, because it was one of these things that just, I don't know, it just perpetuated and sort of didn't go away. And even talking to my kids now, it still does exist to some degree, which I'm really surprised about in some way. So yeah, besides the weirdness of hearing like banjo and like jug music in a Northeast high school where the soundtrack was like Public Enemy and hip hop and alternative music and punk music and all this kind of stuff. I think one of the weirdest things was it seemed like it was a little bit Lord of the Flies, right? And it seemed like it was on purpose. So being in elementary school and junior high school, maybe it started to kind of rear its head in junior high, but more so in high school, they would have this dynamic of team sports where you would come in and basically, in no uncertain terms, the gym teacher would choose two captains and say, okay, you and you, Chris and John, you guys are on opposite sides. I need you to pick your teams. We're going to go out and play football or baseball or soccer or basketball, whatever it was. And then one by one, every remaining kid in that gym class would be picked until the last vestiges, the nerdy kids, the overweight kids, the kids that were seen as complete spazzes or unathletic would be picked. So usually you would think the athletic kids would be picked first, especially the kids that were really good at said sport, right? The basketball stars, the soccer athletes, the football people, whatever. And then slowly it would erode to the least desirable people. And it just even then, it just seemed like the cruelest model that you could do. And I have to say, and I'm not patting myself on the back, I wasn't an athlete in school. By the time I was in high school, I was already like the known skateboard guy, right? I was probably, in all fairness, I don't want to give myself too much or too little credit. I was probably always picked in the top third, right? So I never really had that sensation of being one of the last kids, trying not to make eye contact, just like looking, trying to pretend like I'm the last one to be picked of 30 kids. You know what I mean? Like there's something really, just really traumatic about having to go through that. And I remember feeling bad for those kids. But even then, I just saw that there was something wrong with that. And I think being a skateboarder sort of gave me some sort of like, all right, he could skate well, so he has some sort of athletic credibility. And I remember my proxy was this kid, Nate, who was like the known surfer dude. Like he was surfing since he was like a third grader. And he was just, me and Nate would always be picked. I would always be looking at him and he'd always be looking at me because we'd always be picked, like 6th, 7th, 8th out of the 30 kids or something. And I would always get pissed off when he was picked before me because I felt like, why is he getting picked before me this week? I was picked before him last week. But we would always go back to back, which was really interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Right? And he was always the one I was looking at. And I'll never forget that. But here's the thing that also sucked about it. It wasn't necessarily, or even, it really wasn't even at all the athletic kids that were picked first. It was the popular kids. Right?
Right.
It was a popularity contest, just like everything else in high school. But it just seems so strange to me that the teachers acknowledge that. I was saying this to Helene. I feel like the Gen Xers, again, this is not patting my generation on the back because we're seen as the pessimists. And I think there's a lot wrong with Gen X. Or a lot
I think there's a lot right.
I
think there's a lot right with Gen X too.
A lot right. a lot right, but we're not perfect. But I do think we were the first generation to get into the positions of being the teachers or being the administrators and saying like, look, let's pump the brakes on this practice. It's mean-spirited, right? Which is interesting because the generation that we were raised by, the baby boomers, definitely dealt with the same thing in high school and then went on to drop it on their progeny, right? Like they were like, it's almost like the baby boomers have no memory of being a kid, which is weird because they're a nostalgic generation. I feel like the Gen Xers were the first to usher in a little empathy and be like, look, this is a very Lord of the Flies practice. High school is already hard. You already have all these social challenges being a kid. Let's not create this hierarchy of importance by telling these same kids that are picked perpetually last for years on end, by the way. What do you think that does to somebody's ego or confidence or, you know what I mean? Like,
I just to interrupt quick.
Yeah, sure.
Or something that I think doesn't belong in that space, right? It's not even important or relevant to your success there.
Right.
You know? So that it's also doesn't, it's nonsense. You're totally right. It's screwy,
but at that time, it's like,
yep.
You don't know, like I can't tell my 15-year-old, like, look, like they're always talking about the popular kids and you could see them trying to figure it out. They're trying to navigate the social hierarchy of high school. And, you know, nothing's going to change 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s today. It doesn't matter, right? There's always the styles change, the music changes, the fashions change, the technology changes, but those mainstays are always going to be consistent, right? Like there's the popular kids, there's the nerdy kids, there's the ostracized kids, there's the creative kids, the athletic kids, all of these things. And I could see my daughter and her friend, your niece, and her friends trying to navigate this thing now. And even with Graydon, who's 12 now, like trying to figure out the inroads of what makes this whole system tick.
Yeah, 12,
right?
12 as a boy is an interesting age.
Oh, I think it's a tough one.
Yeah.
I do, because you're really finding yourself and stuff. But this does still go on to some degree. Like even Graydon, and you know, he's still in elementary school. He's in 6th grade. And so he's not quite even in junior high yet. And he's saying like, no, sometimes we do split off and we'll pick. And he was even making an interesting point, which I don't remember this. He'll say sometimes for certain sports, he'll be mixed in the whole gym class. So 35 kids, boys and girls, captains picking. Now you're getting sort of put in that pecking order with members of the opposite sex. So it could be extra embarrassing.
Definitely.
Right? When you're picked last and now all your contemporaries are there. Right?
Even the
girls.
That's
another thing. It's like,
yeah.
Oh my God. Like it's just, I think some people, and I kind of expected you to be at least partially of this mind because I know how you are. And I know your nature. Like there's something like there's a survival of the fittest sensibility to it where it's like, well, maybe kids need to deal with that because to some degree, because the world is competitive, right? And you are going to have to vie for a position. And, you know, I mean, you could even boil it down to things that you can't really talk to them about yet. Like we're all vying for a mate, right? We're vying for a job. We want an income, a certain income. You're vying for material things, whatever it is. So there's something in those fledgling life experiences where it's like, no, this is going to play in an odd way to being an adult. But
I agree.
But what you're saying also really resonates because it's not important. But in their little stratosphere, at their age, in their little universe, their bubble, it's everything.
Well,
and you can't tell them it's nothing because it is everything for a little while.
Well, that's
what I mean?
That's what I should be clear because you're absolutely right. What I mean by that is that it's nothing in the grand scheme of why you are there. So you're putting these kids into a position where they have to, there's a whole machination of gym class that's just totally a distraction. Physical education is important, little p, little e, little p, o. As far as you got to eat right and all that. But I feel like that, just like your spiritual education, just like all these other things, that comes from outside of school.
Yes.
And so I agree with you. And it's funny. I have this theory I was kind of working on as you were talking where our parents, God bless them, our parents' generation, baby boomers, they came from a really, they were birthed by the hardest generation ever.
Yes.
And I think that they looked at everything as saying like, well, look at our parents. They survived the Depression and World War II and won. And then they instilled in us this very strict upbringing, Americana style 50s upbringing. And it worked. And now we're going to do the same thing for you. And then they didn't take back, that's Gen X. And then I don't think they took the time to look at things through the lens of Gen X until they were older. And so I think that's why there are even differences in the way you and I were raised by the same people.
That's a great point.
Because I think they just learned over time, like, we don't have to have this hard ass upbringing because we're not even the hard ass people that our parents were. So why would we expect our kids to be that way? And so on and so forth.
It's a really great point, dude. That's a really, really, I think that's a really nice lens to look at it through. And I think that's true. I mean, I think that's definitely true. I think it wasn't a lack of empathy or sympathy or pushing too hard. It was just kind of where they came from. And then Gen X, I think, I don't know if it was like some ingrained rebellion in our generation or something where we were maybe a little more vocal, or maybe it was just that separation of time where it's like a generation removed. So a little more diluted, where our parents were kind of coming from both minds. So we were able to get a foothold on like, all right, well, like, let's really look at this. Let's be a little more introspective. Like, it was hard growing up. This is a weird thing to do to kids. And, there was also some sort of, I don't know how insidious it was, but I think there was some sort of scouting thing early in high school where it was like, that's when team sports, high school sports is coming into prominence in our lives. Because before that, it's just fun and games. Now, not only are you figuring out your abilities, including your athletic capabilities, but you're also figuring out what you may enjoy. But also the teachers have their eyes set on those kids who might be fast runners, or they may be able to throw the ball hard, or they may be able to throw a football far, or they may be big and have a lot of endurance. They'll be able to tackle another man or block a quarterback or kick a soccer ball on a net or throw a lacrosse ball with a stick. So they're kind of sussing out who's athletic and who might be good to fill these rosters because of the importance of high school sports, because of the importance of college sports, because of the importance and the pedestal that we put on pro sports. So, you know what I mean? It's this kind of domino effect that everybody gets dragged into it. Even the kids who don't have the athletic ability, or maybe more interested in creativity, or maybe more interested in music, or maybe they're just more scholarly and interested in their scholastic sort of endeavors and things like this. So I think that was a lot of it too, which I saw firsthand, that it was like, no, I think it even stopped kids who might have athletic interests from pursuing that, because when they weren't seen as the jocks, they weren't seen as the best candidates because maybe they were a skateboarder or a surfer, or they were known to be good at art, or they were super, super smart. They had a 4.0 average or something. That those kids are kind of blocked at the door, rather than maybe somebody kind of holds out the carrot and entices them to say like, look, maybe you're good at this too. So, because I definitely had that. I think, for instance, like I was a contact hitter at baseball. Like, I could hit an 80-mile-an-hour pitch. That wasn't a problem. I could feel the ball. I had a really bad arm. I couldn't throw far. So like, I think that was but let me in, let me run a base. You know what I mean? Put me in as a pinch runner or something. So that was a thing too, where it was like, I don't know, that you saw the judgmental nature or the way that hierarchy worked all the way up to the adults. And that was always the thing that struck me the most, where it was like, and not to make it too serious, because it is funny too. There is a lot of humor there, I think, to mine. But I think there is some sort of inherent tragedy in I don't know, the adults being part of that Lord of the Flies sort of society and having that same cliquish nature. And it's weird to know that still exists. You know
I'm
what I mean?
surprised that it still exists in some way. Like, what do you gain? Because choosing sides, I don't remember where I used to get chosen, but I don't remember ever being really upset about it. I think I was probably in the middle, right? Like somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
I was an
That's
athlete,
fair.
so I think some people knew that about me. I just wasn't playing sports with the with school necessarily, like the sports that were relevant there, a football or a baseball or something.
Right.
And I think people understood that over time. That actually brings me to one of my major complaint that I want to bring up before I want to stick on this for just a second and say, it is surprising to me that anyone would be subjected to having to choose sides like that in a public environment. Like you said, all of the baggage, that's something you don't ever forget. There are certain things that people have said. There are certain things that people have said to me in my past that I'll never forget. For instance, never. I won't even bring any of them up. Some of them are stupid, right? But I'll never forget the things people said. Like, there are just certain things you don't remember. And if you get beat in a submission like that, just passively over time, it's going to stick with you. And again, it's a shame because not necessarily, I always hated when it was like the nerd is the kid that does well in school. Not necessarily. One of the nerdiest losers in my grade, or I think he might have even been a grade lower. One of those two things was like also horrible at school. She was a fucking idiot. So it's it's not necessarily 1-to-1. He was a fucking moron. And some of the athletes that I knew, like the star football players, were incredibly smart. AP students went to great colleges. So, but I just feel like it doesn't serve the purpose of what a classical style education should be. Your literature, your reading, your all of these kinds of things. Like, what is it's supposed to lift you up and give you the tools necessary to be put forth on an even playing field, regardless of your body type or where you come from or the level of parenting that is foisted upon you and all of that. But Dig, I had to bring this thing up because this thing really got my goat, and I wanted to make sure to bring this up before we go, and we can of course talk about whatever else you'd like. I need to talk about the weight room in high school. Do you remember the weight room? Right?
Of course.
So again, we have a prodigious football team. When you drive into Brookhaven and Bellport, there's a huge sign that greets you with all the championship years of our high school teams, like all they care about. And even though it's a beautiful place, there's so many other things you could talk about, but that's fine. It's cool to have pride. But what bothered me was that the football players, and I was friendly with the football players. I liked the football players. I used to go to the games, and they were, and no problem with them. I love football. But they used to have it so easy during gym because they would just get to, and I don't know if you remember this, they'd either get to go to the weight room where they would do nothing, or they would get to watch film in quotes. And they would get to like stay in the film room and watch film and prepare. And it used to bother me. And I don't think I ever really made the claim forcefully, but it's like, dude, I also play a sport. Here's my letter, And it's like,
absolutely, dude. Absolutely.
And it's like, why didn't I get like the easy way out of gym? And why did I have to subject myself to all this shit? There was just so much favoritism shown towards them. And it just bothered me. I just never really understood that. And it goes into the rigidity of school and education generally that doesn't encompass, it can't possibly encompass by its nature what you do outside of the home. It should really be focused on what you do there. And that's why it's so interesting to take like a French lessons or to take history class or all these things that you build over time. And so I just wanted to bring that out to the unfairness shown towards like the most important athletes, even though there were many athletes that, the runners and the lacrosse players and all the people that probably didn't really need to be there either. And I probably needed to be there a lot less than some fat offensive lineman. No offense, So just wanted to throw that out there. It's always been a chip on my shoulder. It was always like our hockey team wasn't good. In fact, I played for the other school's hockey. We combined hockey teams with our rival school, so we'd have enough players to play. But I was there. It's just that always bothered me a little bit. I love what you've been saying about this. Because when I went to college, my good friend Doug went to lived in Maine, and he played for his high school team, and they had like an arena, and it was like that was their sport. I was like, that must have been fucking awesome. Just like it was at Northeastern, like where it's like hockey is the sport there. Like no one cares about football. In fact, we don't have a football team. We have a Division I hockey team with a beautiful arena and like. And I wish that's my only lament is I wish I came up in that, and I almost did. And that's what's so sad about it is I chose to go back to Long Island, no regrets. But I got into St. Thomas Aquinas, which is a really great private school in New Hampshire with an awesome hockey team. In fact, it's so funny. If you look at my goalie gear over time, I started wearing blue gear in anticipation of playing there because they were blue and black.
Shit.
And so even though Dover, my middle school travel team, was green and black, I started buying blue and black gear because you use it over several years. And it's like, I'm going to need this for this. So then I went to played for Bellport instead, which is red and black, or Patchogue. And so then you could see my gear start to go towards, as I got older and stopped playing red and black. And so I was anticipating being in that culture. And I often wonder what would have happened if I was in that culture. I don't think I was good enough to be in the NHL or anything at all, but I think I probably could have played D1 hockey in college if I continued to play that level, and that would have been fucking awesome. Because I went to a D1 hockey school, but I didn't play. I wouldn't even been on the practice team, So it is what it is. But I wanted to get that off my chest because that always bothered me about gym class.
I like everything you've been saying about this, because it is odd that there is this lack of inclusivity with sports outside of school, because really you should have been given the same consideration as the football players, because you were a serious hockey player, just happened to not be affiliated with the school team. And it is weird, first of all, that just based on geographical location, how different it could be from school to school. For instance, from growing up in New York to growing up just a short distance away in New England, for instance, that, the focus on the team sports could be so varied. But that's another thing, like the marquee sports where we grew up, arguably baseball, football, especially baseball and basketball. And then I would probably put soccer and lacrosse in that category too, especially lacrosse. We grew up in the lacrosse capital of the country.
Yeah, Long Island is huge lacrosse.
Well known for that. And, those were the sports given the critical consideration, and everything else was secondary, which makes me realize, like, what if I wasn't. But what if you, for instance, was, a competitive surfer, which I grew up with a couple of them, or a competitive skateboarder where you were going down to Tampa Am and doing all these crazy things at a young age, 15, 16 years old. These kids are already highly competitive and on the verge of turning pro. You should be given the same consideration, even though you're not doing it in school, because, so if the high schools embrace that, right? And specifically the coaches and the people there and stuff, even if it's outside of their area of knowledge, outside of their scope, their jurisdiction, if you show that you embrace it a little bit, maybe that 16-year-old skateboarder won't drop out of high school. You know what I mean? Like maybe that inclusivity will keep them involved in skateboarding and also keep them involved in school. Knowing like, okay, they know what I'm doing. They're in touch with my pursuits. They're supportive. And they could, whatever it is. And I'm not just saying skateboarding, that's where my heart lies, but I'm just saying in anything, like it's not just about the school sports and school spirit. That's rad too. Like, do you, definitely. Whatever it is,
no problems,
but that's, it should be, that scope should be more inclusive.
I'm looking at my notes and I don't think I have anything else I really want to talk about specifically about gym class, but if there's, I brought this up in the past. I guess one final note is I just always laugh thinking about archery in gym.
Oh, dude, that was going to be my last thing.
Oh, okay. So yeah, talk about it. Because I just, again, and I know I've said this, so I'm sorry for the redundancy for people that have listened to many episodes of KnockBack, but people used to shoot arrows into the ceiling of the gym and then they would stay there for years. And it was that, I find that so funny. Like, I don't know what they were thinking even letting us do that. And it reminds me of our stepdad, Larry. He grew up in Brooklyn and he tells me stories about how they had literal 38 rifles that they would shoot in high school. And that they would
gun ranges in the basement of the school.
And our dad would tell us that they would go hunting or go shooting and just walk down the street with their guns. Like, down, in Williston Park or whatever on Long Island. It's
unbelievable.
It's crazy
how different it is.
I wish it was still like that. I wish people could be trusted to be like normal like that. Cause I think it's awesome that it was like that. And it can't be like that. But yeah, talk to me about archery. What do you recommend? Knocking your arrows, man.
I mean, it's so it's crazy because
taking entire pieces of your fucking wrist off with oh my God, that hurts so bad. Anyway,
that's right. You have to have the wrist guard.
Yeah, totally.
Right. I forgot about that. Yeah. Archery. I mean, It's so weird in this day and age of school shootings, right? And we won't go into a big thing that, Larry's telling us that growing up in New York, there were rifle ranges in the basements of the school buildings. Like, that's how different, not only how different it was physically, but how different the mindset was back then. And Dad's experiences of, being in the 50s and 60s and walking down the street with your 22, in the suburbs. I mean, this is incredible to think about. I was always surprised. We went to school. I mean, I'll speak to my generation. I went to school with a cast of characters. Let me put it that way. I mean, mischief was always afoot, and now every flavor. I mean, that was, we talk about how integrated, quote unquote integrated, or how racially mixed our upbringing was, and religious, racial, everything. Like, we went to school with everybody. It was a real true melting pot where we went to school in Belport. And there were so many characters. There were just so many different characters that I went to school with. Older, younger. I love you talking about the football players in class, because that was one of the crazy things about high school is now you're mixing it up with different grade levels. So I may be in an elective creative writing or ornithology, or maybe even a pre-calculus class or something as a 10th grader. And there might be senior varsity football players in there, that are 2 grades above me. So that was always an interesting eclectic mix. And remember gym class being the same thing. And when I took archery, specifically this one year, I was in 10th grade. So I was a sophomore, and we had partners in archery. And I was with a senior girl, and her name was LaShonda. And she was so funny, dude. She was like a comedic genius. Like, everything she did and said, her sense of timing and her level of sarcasm, especially when the teacher said something, was just, I loved being with her because she would just make me laugh. And every time she saw me, she would just say, she would suck her teeth and she would say, shoot, like, she would just give me the thing. Like, she wouldn't really say much to me. She would just like suck her teeth and say, shoot. So I called her Shoot. Like, I never called her LaShonda. I called her Shoot. So I remember her, and I already knew how to shoot a bow and arrow because I was a Boy Scout. And shooting a bow and arrow is kind of hard. Like, I remember it taking me seasons of summer camp to really learn how to do it. And I wasn't like an expert marksman, but I knew the proper form, how to shoot and how to hold it and how to let go. And
did you run through the woods when you were alone, like Legolas or something like that? Did you try? I would have done that for sure.
I got to tell you, I put archery up. Now, I'm not talking about those crazy 60-pound hunting bows or anything like that. Talking about traditional bow and arrow, right? I think those crazy weighted bows and everything are a little crazy, a little too much. But like straight up traditional archery, I think it's just as fun as kickball. I think it's a really fun thing to do.
Yeah, it is.
Once you learn how to do it, right? And I wasn't hitting the bullseye every time, but I was hitting when you first start archery, your arrows are flying like
they're flying sideways and
12
stuff.
feet, and like they're going along the ground.
I love how they fly sideways sometimes, and hit something sideways instead of going.
I don't know how people didn't die in high school archery class in Belport. I mean, this is a school where, I mean, all joking aside, we had metal detectors, kids had guns. There was a certain drug culture. The gang culture was starting to be a thing, even in the early 90s. So it was it wasn't a typical suburban high school. It was a little on the tougher side. So doing archery was sort of, I felt like that was always like a crapshoot. I was like, all right, we're going to do archery. Like, somebody's going to get murdered.
Yeah, I cannot believe that no one has taken aim at anyone else at Belport High School and tried to shoot them with a bow and arrow.
I don't know how. The gym teachers must have been so nervous during archery class, because I'm sure they didn't know what kids were going to get up to with that. But it was so, it was so fun. And from what I'm reading, my daughter just started high school, so she has quite a long ways to go.
How's she enjoying it?
She's trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
She's really trying to, like, I think there's the one dynamic of Helene teaching in the building.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Which,
that's interesting.
I don't know. I would think that could be easier in some ways, but also harder, right? And Lilia actually has Helene next semester for a teacher. So that's going to be, I
didn't even know that was allowed.
It's allowed only if there's no other teacher that teaches what you teach in the building. So if somebody else taught the sequential fine art classes, then Helene wouldn't be able to have Lilia as a student. But because Helene's the fine arts teacher and that's it, then Lilia has to go to her.
That's very interesting.
So it's
got to give her A's. Got really no choice. Got to give her A's.
You would think, right?
Or no idea.
Or extra tough. Who knows? I don't know how that's going to go.
Honestly, I think you have to be tough.
I think the toughness will probably I think Helene is going to be of that mind, and I think Lilia is going to rise to the occasion. So it'll work out because of the personalities.
Sure.
But I could also see that being kind of disastrous in a way.
Well, I think Helene's got to own it at the very beginning of the class and say, obviously, just in case anyone doesn't know, and be like, "This is my daughter." Yeah.
That publicly,
I think that's very important to own it. Yeah,
definitely. Like, make it known publicly, and also make sure Lilia is aware of the expectations. Like, I expect the same thing from you as student B. You know what I mean? Like, if not more so, because you already know a lot of this stuff just from growing up with me. Technique and that's materials and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's that, but I have to say from afar, and I don't say this to them, I hope they don't see this. I'm definitely, my curiosity is piqued. Like, I feel like I'm there with my popcorn and I want to see what happens.
Yeah, me too. It's very
not in a mean way, but in a very curious way. Like,
sure.
This should be kind of interesting.
Definitely.
It's untrodden territory for us, right? But yeah, I think I'm watching Lilia and her best friend Julia try to figure it out. Like, even in their conversations, just overhearing what they're saying, like trying to figure out what makes that whole thing tick. Not just the classes, the new teachers, honors and AP and all these academic challenges, but just socially. Like, even Lilia's not a cheerleader because Lilia is really involved in dance like you were with hockey outside of school. Like, Lilia's main endeavors are outside of school. But Julia is in cheerleading, and she's saying, like, even the friends she grew up with are acting competitively with each other, just via cheerleading and who's in varsity and who's in JV and who's going to try out for varsity this year, and sort of being like staunch, competitors with their positions and not really, forgive the pun, cheerleading for each other, but actually acting more competitively or setting up obstacles for each other, and it's getting a little ugly and things. So I don't know.
I'm glad I'm not in that anymore, in that world.
Oh man.
It gives me agita.
It's tough. It's tough, dude. It's tough.
I'm glad not be a kid. It's hard.
You know what's funny about gym class? It's kind of it's a microcosm of the larger picture, right? It's a microcosm of everything that's happening socially, especially in that time period for us. That's why the picking sides things is so, in a way, it's hilarious. But yeah, think about the trauma that could leave on that kid that was systematically, repeatedly picked last for years. In our case, we went to high school for 9 through 12. So for 4 years, it was great to be picked in the top percentile. But even looking at the whole thing, it was like, I would feel so bad for people, And even, it's just so fun. And that's what you realize when everything pans out and you leave that high school building and you graduate, cap and gown, you walk, all these things. You realize, like, it's so funny that it didn't really matter, but it really is everything when you're that age.
Totally.
Whether you care about it, whether you're down for it or not. As
You're
rebellious or as involved as you are, it doesn't matter.
That's right.
It's your whole, it's everything. It's everything. And the other thing I have to say, Kyle, in closing, is that my biggest fear, I don't know how it was set up my senior year, but typically I think in New York specifically with your senior year, you could actually boil down a lot of what you need to do, even for a Regents diploma, which is a special New York diploma. You could get a lot of the stuff out of the way by the end of your junior year. So your senior year, you could kind of set up, if you're strategic, to be a little bit of a cakewalk, right? Like, you could have a shorter day, less classes, maybe just plug all your electives in. You finished whatever your sequences were going to be in math, science, art, whatever, English, whatever your sequences are going to be, history. And you could just kind of have an easy time of high school, which is what I did. Because I really didn't like high school. And by senior year, I was over it. And I think I did have creative writing and a couple of classes I gave a shit about, but for the most part, not too much. And luckily, I don't even know how this worked out, but by stroke of luck, gym class was late in the day. So I thought it would be really clever to just skip out on 8th period and leave. And it got to the point where I missed like dozens of gym classes that I had played hooky. And I got a thing saying, you're not going to graduate. Like, you're going to fail gym. And what you were saying earlier in the conversation, and you're not going to be able to walk with your class. You're going to have to go to summer school. Dude, you want the fear of God in you? Like, when I realized the consequences of what I was doing, I was so studious. Like, from probably March or April through June, I made sure I was the first person in that gym class and the last person to leave. Like, I was like, there's no way I'm going to summer school for gym, enduring that level of shame. And then on top of all that, not walking with my class, like mom and dad they're going to kill me. I don't think they even knew. I don't think they even knew about the letter or about what was hanging over me, that dark cloud. And it was my worst fear, because I remember my senior year, junior year too, like I would miss the bus. I would skate to school. I would get there like 20 minutes late for homeroom. Like, it was I was a mess. Like, you wouldn't think I was a delinquent because there was no drugs or alcohol involved. I was just a fucking mess. And I just didn't care. So I almost didn't graduate from high school because I was failing gym. And I had to bring it up. And I remember having the conversation with, I guess that was Mr. Sip at the time.
Coach
or
Sip.
Something, who was like, who never acknowledged me in 4 years. Like, I was completely off of his radar. Like, I was nowhere near his favorites list or anything like that. He said to me, like, I'm super proud of you, Moriarty, for like coming and participating and doing your thing. And I know you're like a skate rat or whatever he said to me, but like, that was crazy validation from one of like the jockiest dudes in my life. One of the most pro jock people I've ever dealt with as a kid.
Our football little stadium is named after him at Bellport.
And his two sons were on the varsity team at that time. They had graduated 2 years prior to me. So I was a sophomore when they were seniors. I think that's how it went. The SIP boys. So yeah, dude, that was another thing where I had that close call in high school. Like, oh my, are you this much of an idiot? You're going to fail because of gym class. You just finished taking French for like 6 or 7 years. I had an AP English sequence, all my art. I think I had a science sequence. Like, I did it. I achieved everything, but now I was going to have to go to gym for summer school. I was mortified.
Yeah, that sucks. That would have been scary. Summer school was a very scary prospect.
That idea.
Yeah, just again, that idea. But I think that we need to, in the United States, rethink education. Like, just totally rethink it. I think that kids go to school too long in some respect. Like, I don't think you need to be there. Yeah, and I think maybe the years are right, but I think at some point, and I know they do this in Germany and Japan and other places in some ways, but it's like kids need to split off earlier. I think we do a few disservices to kids. First of all, I think we tell all children that they can all achieve the same things, and they can't. Right? Like, there's just a bajillion different reasons why they can't. We all know the kids that we went to school with that were incredibly academically gifted. Right? I think I was smart, but I don't think I was academically gifted necessarily. I still had to work to do well. And those kids probably shouldn't have been around and even having to share classes with kids that read 4 or 5 levels lower than them, can't do the math that they do, don't have the drive. Like, they should be doing something else. The kids that want to be in trades or are good with their hands, or like, that shit should be identified earlier. And I think
earlier would be better.
I just think like maybe like everyone goes to school until 8th or 9th grade. And then there are 3 years where there's different things you have to do, but you just kind of subdivide a little sooner, and it makes it so that college isn't so important, because I think college is just the cost is out of control. I don't think it's even necessary for many people to go to college anymore. I've long said that. I think it's foolish to go to college I say this to people all the time, unless you have a laser focus on what you want, and you know that what you want, the barrier between that is a college degree in engineering, a college degree in mathematics or something, then go do it. But if you're going to Northeastern, like I did, for American history, and you really have, and you're just stoned the entire time, and you have no idea what's going on, right? And I did well. I graduated with honors, but it's like I was just remarking. I was remarking recently, like I don't think that degree means anything to me. Like, in terms of like where I was. In fact, it stopped me from going to IGN earlier. And I'm not saying that the arc would have been, because I got offered a job originally when I was 19. I didn't end up working there until I was 22. I don't think it would have affected my career, and I don't want to change any of it because I met so many amazing people, so many amazing experiences. I'm not one of those people that wants to go back and tweak my past at all. But I'm saying that objectively looking back at that time, it's like, what did that do for me? Because I wasn't the engineer. I wasn't the mathematician or the physicist or the chemist so I just think we need to rethink things so that kids that don't have those necessary skills can still achieve. And we should be lifting up the trades because the dudes that do trades are super smart too. And they make more money than these people that go to college for 4 or 6 or 8 years as well. But then there's a whole subdivision of people that are just the kids that are just dumb, and you have to just deal with that too. There's just a lot of stupid kids. Why don't we ever say that? Why don't we ever say that? Yeah, we all knew them. Right? We all knew. I'm not talking about disabled kids, any of that stuff, special education. I'm not talking about that. We all knew
just natural. Yeah.
Dude, there's a vast portion of the kids that I went to school with that are dumb. And in college, too. Dumb. And we have to subdivide them as well.
I'm trying to think. You know what's great?
Instead of teasing their futures.
I did. I was going to say, I did go to high school with a particularly smart class. Dana's class too, a year younger than me. They were very bright. I think the dumber kids graduated before me, but there were some characters for sure. And you're right. It wouldn't hurt to try to advocate for kids really thinking about what they might want to do or be or pursue earlier. How can that hurt? Just really try to instill, like, what do you love to do? Like, what are you passionate about? Does it fall in this narrow sort of academic purview, or is it outside of that? Is it working with your hands? Is it artistic? Is it creative? Do you want to go into, advertising, the arts, whatever it is? I think a bachelor's degree anymore. And now this is coming from somebody who has an associate's degree. I don't even have a bachelor's, so I'm not naysaying a bachelor's degree. I feel like anymore, I can't speak to all trades, but largely it's a gateway to getting your master's degree. I think that's the point of getting a bachelor's degree. Like, you have to get one before you get your master's, because anymore in this day and age, you need a master's more and more for anything. I've said this in the past, but I went to the Art Institute of Philadelphia for animation, which was largely a trade school. In and out, processing plant, put you out there, package you up with the other processed cheese, and then put you out into the world, into the workplace. That was the point. And we knew that going in. And you get to really concentrate on your area of expertise. So you get to concentrate on animation with some electives, but it's animation. We're going to make you an animator, put you out into the workplace. And I had teachers that were brilliant, by the way, that didn't graduate from high school. Okay. I went to school in the mid 90s. Wasn't that long ago. Now you have to have a master's degree to teach at any art institute. Okay. So that's how much it's changed. So having that degree, that's another thing where we need to rethink. Like, are you telling me some Joe Blow with a master's degree is more qualified to teach animation than a 25-year veteran who's worked in the field every waking day of his life since he graduated from school in the late 90s? You know what I mean? Like, I'm more qualified to teach animation right now than anybody coming out of school right now with a master's degree. You know what I mean? So we have to rethink that as well. It's like that whole thing of the piece of paper. You know what I mean? The piece of paper, the accolade, the bragging right, whatever it is,
Yeah,
what are we talking about? What tangent am I going off on right now?
No, I think we have to talk about expertise differently. And
yes, that's well said.
I think of, like, what if you grew up in a family, your father runs a landscaping business, you're in 10th grade and you're like, well, this is what I want to do. I want to learn the business. I want to be with my dad. I want to do what he does. And it's like, what's more useful? Let's say the kid changes his mind in 6 years and wants to do something else. In a fair society, what's more useful? Him in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade learning the business from his dad, then working a few years after that, and then deciding he wants to do something else, or 10th, 11th, and 12th grade? It's just nonsense. At that point, you know everything you really need to know, right? Like, you should You should be able to read. You should be able to do basic math. You should be able to figure out some economic things, social studies, your civics, your all these things. And
sure,
at that point, it should be okay, I think, for people to say, like, I want to go do something else now. And that used to be the way it was, and it's not that way anymore. And I think that it's just a little too stifling, but I don't know anything about it. You know, this would be something that we should talk to our, you know, your wife and our brother-in-law, who is has his PhD in education and all the rest.
Sure. They'd both be good to have on the show. But you're right. I mean, but also it's common sense. Give room for discovery. Young people are gonna change their minds, man. Not everybody is blessed and 5 years old and, oh, grandpa taught me what animation is. That's what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? Like that. Not everybody has that. I mean, I don't have a lot of blessings, but that was one of them where it was like, oh no, it's going to be that thing. And that's it.
Totally.
And I had a brief flirtation with being Indiana Jones for 2 weeks. And then I was like, no, go right back to animation. Like, totally. I'm so lucky. But that's, you know, I think about that with my kids. I don't know what they're going to do. But
I had the same thing with my educational pursuits, but with no guidance on what I could or couldn't do with it. That was the problem. It's like I wish someone said to me, what? Like, well, why are you doing that? I wish I at least no one ever asked me why. And I appreciate that we had the freedom to do what we wanted, but I think too little guidance is also a problem as well. Like someone should have asked me like, well, what do you want to do? Like, have you gamed this out? Do you understand what you're doing? Do you understand the undertaking before you? Do you understand the likelihood of success? Do you understand how much money it's going to cost you? No one asks kids anything. It's like, you got to get to college, go into college. One size fits all for everybody. Everyone's got to go to college. Everyone's got to do the same 13 years in school. There's, you know that you're only smart if you go to college. You're only smart if you have a high school degree. It's like, okay, dude, if you say so. Silly. If you say so. Dig, let's get the hell out of here. It's time to go.
Do you think anybody got into archery class and like, was there one person that got into archery class and that was their epiphany moment? It was
Maybe.
Like, I'm going to be a professional archer.
And I like that kind of stuff. And I understand that there is that nature of physical education, the exposure and all of that. And that's true with everything. But the numbers are so low that it's like, you got to really focus on what's good for everyone. And then when you can't do that anymore, you got to split them up so that everyone can do what they need to do to be the best human they can be. I think it's very arbitrary. I think this whole structure of 18 years old and 12th grade and I just feel like we made this up. We just totally made this up. 18 years old a few hundred years ago would have been like you would have been a grizzled veteran at the fucking forge at 18 years old. True. You would have looked like you were 38. True. Anyway, Dave, let's end this episode like we always do with a dad joke.
All right, my friend, I got one right here. Just want to say in closing, you bastards that I grew up with are lucky there wasn't skateboarding in gym yet, because I wouldn't have picked any of you guys. Or girls.
Would have ollied off their forehead.
That's my dream. I can't believe there's skateboarding in gym now. I mean, that's awesome. Just like we've come a long way.
X Games, I think, did a lot to legitimize the way people
I think so
at
too.
It.
Yeah, because that was even before the Olympics and everything like that. So, All right, we're going to revisit our old friend Brian Henninger. I think probably the most prolific dad joker of them all for us at KnockBack. Kyle, Brian sends us one. Why did the dad who went out for pasta get locked out?
I don't know.
He had no key. He had no key. Is it gnocchi or is it gnocchi? It's gnocchi. Gnocchi. He had a gnocchi. No. He had gnocchi. He had gnocchi.
Gnocchi. All right, Dave. Well, that was all right. I wasn't thrilled with that one, to be honest.
I think it's better than I made it, Brian. So apologies to you, my friend.
Yeah. I don't know about that, to be honest, Brian. I think that might have been a miss.
I'm trying to make you feel good. All right, I would pick all of you first.
Exactly. No favorites. I would make sure that none of you graduated the 12th grade, so you can do whatever you want instead. All right, Dig, I appreciate your time as always. Good to see you. And we'll see you next time. We'll see you all next time as well for more KnockBack. Appreciate your love, kindness, and support on free feeds, on YouTube, on Patreon, merch, laststandmedia.store. Could not do it without you. We'll see you soon. Until then, goodbye. KnockBack, a retro and nostalgia podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and the Philadelphia suburbs, USA. The show was conceived by and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Dagan Moriarty. KnockBack's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including KnockBack, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Woo.
I like it.
There was I went to a wedding, my friend Kevin Reed's wedding, and a lot of hockey players and fans, like very prodigious hockey playing family and all of that. And there was a table of his friends. I guess they played hockey with each other or whatever when they were younger. And at his wedding, when they would introduce each groomsman, they would go...
That's amazing.
And it was just really, and he married an Indian girl, and they did a 2-day wedding. One day was like Indian, one day was like the Western.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was cool. And so I went to both, and I think the Indian family was a little horrified at the Western side. I
could understand that.
Yeah,
I would be horrified. There was no person on that side of the wedding with all their teeth.
Right, exactly. We have to tell the guys to put this on after, because we're not even haven't even started the show yet. You guys can stitch this at the end or whatever. Okay. You can also stitch at the end that the Indian side was actually pretty cool. They wore really nice clothes, and they danced in a huge circle. And I was talking to all sorts of mysterious family members from that I think were like off the plane. Never saw them before, never saw them again. Just random people. No, it was funny. All right.
I got to tell you something, man. You're inspiring me. You have a wedding coming up, and I love the notion of a multiple day wedding. You only do it once, hopefully, right? Why not really extend that festivity, right? I love the idea of a 2-day wedding. Now, I know you right now, you're balking at the cost of this, but don't, because
I am already balking at the cost.
I know you. I could read your mind, but I like the idea of celebrating because you put all this planning, right? It's done. You wake up in the morning. By the time you go to bed that night, it's over. The flowers, the DJ, the food, the venue, the guests, the gifts, all these things. It's done. The clothes, the bride's dress, all these things.
Very stressful.
So why not extend? Maybe I'm going to say even over a long weekend. Now you're really walking.
Wow. It's like get started on Friday afternoon, maybe. All right, let's begin the show.
All right.
Guys, you can stitch that at the end. All right.